Can you imagine a senator in the US Senate coordinating the shipment of contraband cigarettes to Mexico during a session? Or a member of the British House of Lords illegally tapping into a city sewer and not paying for it for years? Of course, in the US or the UK, such actions by officials would be unacceptable. But in Ukraine, these are ordinary realities for Verkhovna Rada deputy Vasyl Petyovka, who became known after journalists from the 1+1 TV channel caught him during a session giving orders on his smartphone about how many trucks of cigarettes, which brands, and to which countries to send. Petyovka also gained specific notoriety after the mayor of Mukachevo accused him of illegally tapping into the city's sewer system and failing to pay for its use for years, resulting in his water supply being cut off. Ukrainian media have accused Petyovka of corruption, cigarette smuggling, causing economic damage to Ukraine, US, UK, and EU tobacco corporations, press persecution, and destabilizing the international and political situation for years. Despite the fact that the president of Ukraine considers smuggling to be economic terrorism against Ukraine, and the budget losses from smuggling amount to $8 billion annually, the 1+1 story about Petyovka went unnoticed by any Ukrainian law enforcement agency, and Vasyl Petyovka continues his activities as a deputy. While the president and the Ukrainian government are making great efforts to attract financial aid to Ukraine from foreign partners, deputy smugglers like Petyovka cause enormous annual damage to the state. If before the war, Petyovka himself calculated these losses as hundreds of thousands of jobs lost, and the unrealized modernization of thousands of hospitals and schools, then during the war this can be counted as unprovided air defense systems to protect Ukrainian cities and unassisted millions of people who fled the war and lost everything. This is the economic terrorism against Ukrainians that the president of Ukraine is talking about. Why are we reminding you of all this? To make it clear who we are up against in the abnormal situation we are about to describe. In our story, a group of looters, led by Deputy Petyovka, changed the lives of thousands of women, children, and the elderly, many of whose relatives are defending Ukraine on the front lines. Unfortunately, people with Petyovka's morals don't change even during wartime. When the full-scale invasion of Ukraine began, while people were in distress, thinking only about survival, Petyovka's business boomed. According to the anti-corruption outlet Bigus Info, in the first months of the war, he imported luxury cars worth $650,000 for just one of his companies. Additionally, the deputy completed the construction of a luxurious restaurant. He voted for the world's parliaments to recognize the Holodomor of 1932 to 1933 in Ukraine as genocide. Meanwhile, he and his raider group orchestrated a modern-day famine for thousands of women, children, and the elderly who fled the war by seizing the volunteer hub Venice and depriving them of daily hot meals, medical care, and other assistance. Every day, the children, wives, and mothers of those on the front lines defending Ukraine received hot meals, medical care, and other help at this hub. Over 1,500 people who fled the war relied solely on Venice.
Now we're here to get our things. At least we had a hot meal for 2 days and got our stuff. It's good. Thank you very much.
The hub existed solely on the aid of numerous international organizations such as the Nobel Peace Prize laureate Doctors Without Borders, the Red Cross, and ADRA, as well as support from the people of Mukachevo and citizens of the US, UK, and many EU countries. Photos of the hub were even posted on the President of Ukraine's Facebook page under his words about the resilience of Ukrainians. The hub operated for 14 months from the first day of the war in Ukraine, after which it was illegally seized. The food meant for hundreds of refugees was thrown into trash containers, and the volunteers and displaced people were thrown out onto the streets like garbage. Supplies brought by international charitable organizations, enough to provide meals for at least 6 months, were taken to the raiders' warehouses without notifying or involving the members of the Venice volunteer hub. For over a year now, the place that fed the needy looks like this. These children, along with their mothers and grandmothers, have been left without support or help. Their fathers are defending Ukraine on the front lines, but no one is protecting the families of the defenders. A year ago, they were deprived of food and assistance. So in this situation, how are Petiovka and his group, who left thousands of families hungry, different from the Bolsheviks who caused the Holodomor in 1932? They are not. And perhaps that's why it's no surprise that the partner of Ukraine's patriot Petiovka in the seizure of the volunteer hub was the notorious raider Kostyantin Parshin, who, according to the media, participated in the takeover of dozens of Ukrainian enterprises and helped Russia's Sberbank deprive Odessa of bread. He is even referred to as a Kremlin-serving raider. What Parshin failed to do in Odessa, the Petiovka-Parshin group managed to achieve in Zakarpattia, depriving Ukrainians of daily hot meals. Judging by Parshin's actions in both Odessa and Zakarpattia, it's clear what kind of goals he chooses and why he appeared in Zakarpattia. Perhaps one of Parshin's handlers decided that his experience would be useful in this strategically important region of Ukraine, bordering 4 EU countries. What could link Petiovka with people like Parshin? A shared business, located in a building owned by Petiovka, and a complete lack of morality. How do such people find each other? One can only speculate. The seizure of the volunteer hub and the deprivation of aid to refugees became possible through a fraudulent scheme. The building complex, Venice, with an area of 3,200 square meters, was re-registered for free. Officially listed at 7,130,000 Ukrainian hryvnias, about $200,000, $60 per square meter, under Petiovka's longtime business partner, Alexander Mikhailovich Kemenyash, a deputy of the Zakarpattia Regional Council and a former member of the Verkhovna Rada for 3 terms, BYUT, as collateral for a $500,000 loan from Petiovka. This was part of Petiovka's scheme to issue a loan for the launch of the Zakarpattia Expo exhibition and business center in the Venice building. The project could have had significant importance for Zakarpattia, which is why a memorandum was signed with the head of the Zakarpattia Regional Administration, Anatoly Poloskov. The raiders exploited the trusting relationship with the owners of the Venice property complex, as Kemenyash was the godfather to 2 children of one of the property's owners. In the past, he had obtained bank loans for his companies using the Venice property as collateral without any guarantees for the building's owners. The owners could never have imagined that their children's godfather would take the last thing from them. The raiders also took advantage of the mental state of one of the owners, who had been undergoing treatment in psychiatric hospitals in Ukraine for an extended period, including just before signing the documents that the raiders needed. The raiders were fully aware of this and used it to their advantage. Additionally, the raiders exploited trust in the status of a member of parliament, as no one could have imagined that the leader of the native Zakarpattia party, whose motto is patriotism, MP Petiovka, would behave like a common fraudster. As a result of fraudulent actions by the Petiovka-Parshin group, the Mukachevo Inter-District Court opened a criminal case on large-scale fraud. However, just like with the report by the 1+1 TV channel, Ukrainian law enforcement has failed to take note of the crimes committed by this raider group. A prompt investigation into the fraudulent re-registration of the Venice complex through a fictitious transaction and documents at a grossly undervalued price that goes against state interests could have allowed the agreement to be declared invalid and preserved the operation of the volunteer hub and aid for the displaced. The Venice complex, which the Petiovka Parshin group fraudulently re-registered for free, is now being sold at what the raiders consider a market price, $6 million. This SMS from a person exposed for lying live on air by 1+1 journalists and Bihus.info is Petiovka's full confession. Here's your masterclass from MP Petiovka on how to make money during war. The reasons for the police's inaction in this criminal case are no secret to the group members, who are accustomed to impunity. These reasons are openly discussed, even with well-known figures in Ukraine. In contrast, in situations beneficial to the raiders, police demonstrate unprecedented activity. For instance, to take statements from volunteers and refugees, dozens of police officers arrived at the hub during the height of the war, occupying the site for the entire day. Later, to enforce a decision of the commercial court, which was based on fraudulent documents obtained by the raiders during wartime, 60 police officers and special police units in masks were deployed for an entire day against volunteers and refugees, children, wives, and mothers of soldiers defending Ukraine on the front lines. The people of Zakarpattia had never before seen such a large police presence against criminals or drug dealers as was used to evict displaced persons and volunteers during the war. Off-camera, there were individuals in camouflage with the insignia of a group associated with Mykola Tyshchenko, which was supporting the marauders. On camera, there were security firm members whom the head of that group publicly accused of involvement in drug trafficking, as well as Parshin's people who participated in seizing the hub. Against volunteers and refugees, the raiders united everyone. We are sure that if the fathers, husbands, and children of those deprived of aid by the raiders could have returned from the front lines to protect their wives, children, and mothers, no support groups could have helped the raiders. We are also certain that Petiovka and Parshin will eventually be held accountable by the people whose children and mothers they deprived of daily hot meals. Their raider tactics of steal $1 billion, donate $1 million to the armed forces of Ukraine, wear an embroidered shirt, and you're a saint, carry on with your lawlessness, will not save them. The seizure of the volunteer hub sparked a significant public outcry. Even the first cable TV channel couldn't ignore the issue and aired a segment about the hub's takeover. Journalists asked, what will happen to those who were deprived of all support, and were met with several lawsuits from the raiders' group members, claiming defamation and seeking compensation for moral damages. Petiovka, who has always been an enemy of the press, remains so. Additionally, as part of this same raider attack, the Petiovka Parshin group halted the state-supported Ukraine Expo project, which could have had a multi-billion-dollar impact on Ukraine's recovery and its international partners. Everything this group does is against Ukraine and its people. Therefore, their systematic actions can be seen not only from a legal standpoint, but also as having an anti-state nature, especially as an economic sabotage against Ukraine. Why can't Ukraine protect its interests and those of its citizens, the children of those defending the country on the front lines? What more do Petiovka and Parshin need to do before they are stopped? Why is the group's anti-state activity unnoticed by everyone except journalists, who are being silenced? In a situation where the law is ineffective, our only weapon is public awareness and drawing attention from people who will not turn a blind eye to the misfortune of others. We aim to bring this information to the attention of the President of Ukraine and international politicians, confident that the situation can be quickly resolved once this crime reaches their ears. Our goal is the restoration of the rule of law, the resumption of daily hot meals for refugees at the Venice volunteer hub, and the revival of the high-yield, state-supported international project Ukraine Expo, which was also halted by the raiders. This project could have become a social initiative, not only generating income, but also providing aid to refugees, fleeing the war in Ukraine. Given that the leader of this marauding group, Petiovka, is an enemy not only of Ukrainian but also American, British, and European taxpayers, we will address this issue directly to 1,000 influential world politicians, journalists, TV and newspaper editors, international anti-corruption organizations, business people, artists, public figures, patriotic citizens, honest law enforcement officers, and all concerned individuals, asking them to support us in achieving this goal in whatever way they can. We believe that none of them will remain indifferent. One more thing, a curious coincidence. Soviet officials during the USSR era allowed the construction of a building resembling the Statue of Liberty, a symbol of freedom, justice, and democracy. It is symbolic that this building now houses the Venice Volunteer Hub. Both the refugees and representatives of international charity organizations helping the hub saw this connection. We too believe that this structure, like the Statue of Liberty, will become a symbol of victory, and that corrupt officials and marauders with parliamentary mandates will get what they deserve. Please like and share this information to help restore justice and ensure the daily hot meals for the displaced at the Venice Volunteer Hub.